Alright guys, TacticalRab here and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So for OpTic, Texas have done it. They have qualified for the winners bracket for the major just north of Miami for Major 3, and that is a very big deal for their prospects to try and win the entire thing and make a deep run to make sure they qualify for the World Championship. But that is far from the full story, because today against FaZe, they had a good opportunity to take down a FaZe team that's been struggling somewhat online this stage, but in the end, a couple of remarkable moments again mean that OpTic throw away some of the opportunities they had on the table. What does this mean for the current state of the OpTic team? Because big discussion and controversy, given they started the stage so well, did not finish it so well, and certainly do not take much momentum going into Major 3, which is going to be critical for them, with other teams picking up big points today as well. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. Let's start here, because this, in the end, was the series that confirmed OpTic's spot in the winners bracket, and that was thanks to the Boston breach. Could you believe it, right? Falcons, man, there's a lot to say on this team right now as well. They come into this stage, they've got the brand new team. They look better, for sure. They are better, like there's no doubt about that. But they still finished the stint 1-4, right? And the ice was not really there, to be honest. Now, they won the game one, the Skyline. I mean, again, this is a map, to be fair, that Boston like to play, although if you are any team in the league, I don't think you're playing Falcons on Skyline. Like, that is just the map that they will win off you, and that's what they did here. Really close map one against the Boston breach, but they do eventually take the game one. To the credit of Falcons, we've discussed it a lot over the last few days. Their hardpoint is definitely better with the new team. Their search and destroy not so much. This game, they absolutely crushed them in the search and destroy rewind. So clearly a map I think that Boston might want to be avoiding. But Falcons race into a 2-0 lead. And let's not forget, Boston, their biggest weakness basically this whole season has been their control was pretty woeful. But to the credit of Boston, they've turned that around big time, right? Boston have focused a lot on their control over the last couple of months, and it's starting to pay some serious dividends. We know how important that swing mode is, and Boston have gone from winning barely any controls to now winning a substantial number. And that was the difference maker here, really, because it started to swing the momentum the other way. I do think, again, look, I rate Clay as a player, as a person, as a coach, in all regards. But, you know, it must be said that Clayster's record in control as a player was probably the worst that we've ever seen. The teams that he were on were never particularly good at that mode. Maybe that wasn't all him. But I do have my questions, let's say, about Falcons being coached by Clay as to whether they're going to be good at control either. And this series, it was a bit of a rough time on Vault. Look, again, this is the map that Falcons play. They will play Vault control if you give it to them. But in the end, they lost. This, to be fair, was an opportunity. Nastie's got a couple of kills here, and it took Purge to get the final kill, because if he had actually lost this gunfight, there was maybe a chance here that Nastie's could have taken the dub, but and at least put it to a round 5. But in the end, Boston start the reverse sweep comeback, and that then continues on its way. I'm not going to lie, this next map from Falcons was kind of nowhere. I don't really know what they were doing. I mean, even this final moment here from Xnid, where I know that he's, like, the game is already lost, but there was like 3 seconds on the clock, and he had to chow the hill. There was no time, and he ran away, and then by the time he realized that he had to chow, the game was over. Not like by that point it mattered, but yeah, it wasn't really pretty. And I will say, right, the big debate about this team was not really Xnid and Pred. I think everyone was pretty convinced that that was at least going to be a respectable duo from the SMG side. It was all about the ARs, right? How would the ARs work together? Would they be able to deliver the same performances that, frankly, these teams would require? Because Snoopy just dropped 40 this map, and that's going to happen sometimes. The guy has been great this season. He's been pretty inconsistent, Snoopy. Like, you can't guarantee that he's going to pop off, but he will do on relatively frequent occasions. This was certainly one of them, dropping 41. Tough to lose when you got a player dropping 41 with 2 minutes in the hill, and that's what Snoopy did this map. But even then, right, the debate was whether the Priester-Arcetes combo could actually slay, and mostly the answer has kind of been no, although Priester has been better. Like, I've been pretty impressed by Priester. This, though, was a huge moment in the context of the series. There was a 1v2 earlier from the Boston side that probably Falcons shouldn't have let get away from them, but this was an opportunity that Xnid granted them on a plate. This actually was a 1v3. He eventually gets the first onto Cammy. Purge loses track of him. What a great little play here from Xnid. Super cheesy, but he wins the 1v3. Crazy rounds. Boston super frustrated, but to be fair, they lock back in and they go on to win the map. This was a really tough one for Falcons to lose, right? Game 5, round 11. Obviously, on some level, their season is done, right? Their season is over. But still, a very frustrating way for them to lose. Xnib was gutted about it because a few rounds that they threw away there, and as Pred says, heartbreak and so many round 11s lost. GG's Boston, Grueler series, see everyone at the major. So I think, you know, they're getting better. But the search and destroy here was pretty difficult, and at the end of the day, that puts Boston in a real nice spot. Boston came into this stint in the fight for the World Championship, and sure, they're not safe yet by any means, but a 4-in-1 stint of qualifiers, that's a big 40 points on the board for the Boston Breach, right? They capitalized well this stage, and sure, part of it might have been cheese against Toronto with the reset and the internet, whatever. They capitalized when it matters, reverse sweeping Falcons in 5, and yeah, they get the win. Great series from Cammy overall. He has a 1.2, and it was just a tough conclusion to the series for Arcetes, especially in the search. Looked pretty lost on that red card, and that's not really where they all want to find themselves. But as we said earlier today, Falcons going down 1 in 4, that meant that any team with 2 wins, that was going to be enough for the winners bracket, and that's what we saw. So Minnesota 9th, Falcons 10th, Cloud9 11th, and Los Angeles Grillers in 12th. Those are the seedings. We'll discuss what the bracket looks like tomorrow morning, because that's certainly pretty fascinating. But OpTic, they guaranteed themselves winners bracket, and it's not like they did anything, right? Like, they relied on the Falcons losing in the Game 5 round 11, but that's what happened, and therefore they were kind of free to attack the FaZe series in a very positive way, and that, frankly, they did. Look, FaZe, it's not an aberration, right? Like, their respawn, their hardpoint especially, is clearly somewhat compromised, and they will go into the major. I wouldn't say they should be dramatically concerned, but if you're a team like Thieves, if you're Toronto, if you're, you know, Surge or another team that fancies yourself as a potential event winner, you will recognize that FaZe and Hardpoint are gettable at. Their other game modes are still strong, but in Hardpoint you can certainly beat them, and OpTic frankly capitalized very well game 1. This was a great map from Skyz. Unfortunately, it didn't last, and it didn't last in a pretty emphatic way, right? 28 and 17 from Skyz map 1. There was lots of talk going into the series. Need to see a big one from Skyz. aBeZy goes 11 and 25 on the other side. Skyz has 2 minutes in Hill, 28 and 17. Like, you know, great map 1 performance from OpTic. The problem for OpTic is that they always, and I mean like always, find the craziest ways to lose, and I just don't get it, really. We talk about it so often here on the channel, and I've said it in the past so many times that like OpTic fans must just be going through it because they just know, even before it happens, you just know that they're going to find some way to lose that you can't possibly imagine is going to be the case. And I don't know what the common denominator really is here, because, I mean, I guess you could look at the fact that Shotzzy and Dashy have been there a while, but it doesn't seem to matter what team they've got. It is the same old story on some level, right? Because this game, maybe OpTic will feel like they could have even won this earlier, right? But it ends up in a round 11. They nearly bring a bit of a comeback. They get the bomb down at 8 for free. And guess what? Skyz has a streak in hand. He's on a 6 spree. He's just planted the bomb. He's got a Hellstorm missile ready to bring down from the sky. He brings down the Hellstorm missile. And to be frank, he probably does it a bit too early. Like, the timing here, the comms, this to me was the most important round of the entire series, and OpTic, you know, they threw it away, let's be real. I mean, the timing was just horrific. Skyz brings in the streak at about 35 seconds. I mean, you can argue that if you're Skyz, I know that, you know, trophies and shooting down the Hellstorm exists, right? But leaving it a bit later could have been the play. Or if you are going to call it in, you've got to use that as your moment for the team to make the play. Instead, Shotzzy with 25 seconds on the clock just runs out mid. I think, you know, he's obviously trying to get a flank on maybe to number 3, but number 3 is maybe up top anyway. So it doesn't seem like that's the play. And then he gets caught off guard by aBeZy from top window. He gets blessed by a gunfight win. And then number 5, Huke, is nowhere to trade him. And they all just go down one by one. Like, it's just an unforgivable round to lose. I mean, you're game 2, round 11 against FaZe. You're in a 4v4 retake. And FaZe are on the back foot, and you've got a streak in hand. And you get 0 kills. Like, it was a great retake from FaZe, sure. But yeah, tough way for OpTic to lose. The decision-making from Shotzzy wasn't good. The timing on the Skyz streak wasn't good. They find a way to lose the round. And then, of course, the momentum is very much so the other way. It was a pretty competitive control, but in the end, FaZe get the victory there. And then even the map 4, I mean, yeah, so this was how it concluded here in this 1 versus 4 in the end, and Huke was just caught in no man's land when OpTic had got fully retaken on the site. The final game was pretty fascinating. It was a really close vault hardpoint, and again, FaZe managed to do it where they look pretty lost the entire map, and then they find a way over the line at the end. Skyz, though, these final couple of maps, that is the talking point, right? Because game 3, he was 17 and 25. Honestly, as soon as that streak failed at the end of game 2, Skyz was kind of a non-factor for the rest of the series. And this final map was especially rough. I mean, look at the scoreboard here. I know that Skyz has got a couple of minutes of hardpoint time, but if you look at FaZe, Cellium had a really bad series by his standards. You're not going to see this from Cellium often. It's one of those series from Cell that when it happens, you really feel like you've got to capitalize on it. So he only had 22 kills. He was 22 and 35, one of the worst maps you're ever going to see. And like that was what, -13. Simp was +3. So OpTic outslayed them by 10 kills this map, and they outslayed them by 10 kills with Skyz near enough double negative. He was 17 and 29, and yes, he had some hill time, but Huke had 37 kills. Shotzzy had 36 kills. Dashy had 37 kills. And I'm not saying that there were that many more kills to go around, but still, you know, you're expecting if your teammates have got those type of numbers, you can't really lose the map. But that's what happens here. The trades from FaZe map 1 weren't really on point. The trades from OpTic map 4 weren't really on point. And in the end, FaZe take an incredibly close game and close out the series 3-1. Skyz recognised that he'd had a pretty rough map to close out the series here. Tough way for Skyz to debut on the team, really. Obviously, there's so much pressure being on OpTic, but especially given that the pressure was kind of off for this series, they knew they'd made it to the winners bracket, to still make the mistakes they did map 2, map 4, lots for them to think about, and, you know, obviously FaZe were enjoying the situation. With the FaZe up emotes getting thrown up here by Skyz a little bit in the past, and obviously in recent series, I think that Drazah in his last, 19 series against OpTic is something like 16 in 3. It's a pretty mega record he's got against them right now. Drazah has that all gone strings is what they say, 9 in 1 in recent memory. So yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough for OpTic right now. The rivalry's getting away from them. The positive, I guess, was that OpTic actually beat FaZe in HyDra at the same time, 3-1. So they kind of got done the either way. We'll talk about that in more detail, of course, tomorrow. And yeah, Drazah had the opportunity to throw another dagger in there and says, GG's OpTic 1-3-1, just another day. LAN next. So after some scare for FaZe, you know, look, are we shocked FaZe ended up 3-2? I'm not shocked, right? Like, it's basically what they are going to do at this point. But Dashy with a 1.2. Skyz's numbers, like, on paper don't look terrible, but if you consider the fact that he had a really good map 1, after that, it was definitely not quite the same story. Dashy, 12,000 damage, you know, 1.2 KD. He was trying his best, and he shut down Cellium. That is a matchup that historically Dashy's done well in against Cellium. But the rest of the team, it just wasn't quite working today. So, look, there's a lot for OpTic to learn, but it's not like their seeding is good, and their seeding is certainly not optimal. We'll talk about who they're going to play tomorrow and all the upcoming matches that are going to happen in Major 3 next weekends. To get to that point, this was a critical series, because if Ravens won a map here, it was likely that Thieves would have played OpTic in the very first rounds. And to be honest, there's not much to say on this series, because it was Rex's first series with the new team. Absolute baptism of fire against Thieves. And again, in this specific matchup, Thieves just slam them every time. So there's not really much to say other than Thieves just completely destroyed them. I mean, like, look at this. Ghosty with a 1.4, HyDra with a 1.3. I imagine he ended the stage with the highest KD again. And Rex started off with a 0.6. So I guess the positive is it can only get better from here. Gwinn, I mean, 4,000, sub 4,000 damage. Like, how often do you see that, a player with less than 4,000 damage in a series? That can't happen often. So, yeah, this series continues to be absolute one-way traffic. Will it work out for Ravens in the longer term? Like, it's a risk they've taken, but the honeymoon period, if it is happening, it's going to be somewhat delayed, I'd imagine, right? But game 1, Scrappy goes 34 in 15. After that, Scrap kind of just put his feet up a little bit, but he's still into the series with a 1.6. So, yeah, not not a bad outcome, really, for the Thieves guys, and they advance very comfortably in a nice little 4-1 going into the major. So as I say, we'll discuss the bracket and all the respective outcomes tomorrow, but a big day for sure for OpTic, and not the ending that they were looking for. But I guess in terms of the actual placings going into the major, at least they've made it to winners, and they have the opportunity to do what Boston have done this stage, and that is to stretch out a rather comfortable advantage. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.